Welcome to my Sacred Revenge channel, where betrayal isn't just exposed, it's answered.
My name is Julie, and for all of my 28 years, I have been the family's anchor. I'm a senior risk analyst for a major financial firm in Denver, a job that requires me to spend my days staring into the abyss of potential disaster, calculating probabilities and erecting firewalls against chaos. It's a role I seem to play in my personal life, with far greater frequency and far less appreciation. To my family, I am the steady one, the reliable one, the one who holds everything together, while they constantly threaten to tear it all apart. I am the daughter who quietly rerouted her own down payment savings to pay the six-figure sum needed to settle my brother Leo's back alley gambling debts, a secret he tearfully confessed to me one night after a threatening call from a loan shark. I am the one who took on a personal loan to absorb the catastrophic losses from my father Arthur's can't-miss real estate venture in Florida, which sank faster than a stone, and I am the one who, month after month, cleared my mother Eleanor's extravagant credit card statements filled with designer bags and spa weekends, without so much as a thank you. Each time, I told myself, this is what family does, before I begin telling you my story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and if you'd like to share your own story, feel free to write to us. For a decade, that mantra this is what family does was my justification. It was the balm I applied to the sting of their carelessness. I believed I was providing a safety net, born of love. But love isn't supposed to feel like a slow draining account. It isn't supposed to feel like being the only person in a lifeboat, rowing furiously while everyone else drills holes in the hull. The belief had become a gilded cage, beautiful with performative affection on the outside, but suffocatingly lonely within. The unconditional love I offered felt increasingly like a one-way, high-interest loan I was giving to people who had no intention of ever paying it back. This realization didn't come like a lightning strike, but like a slow, creeping dawn that finally illuminates the wreckage you've been living in all along. The final shattering of that illusion began last Tuesday evening. It started with a deceptively cheerful text from my mother. Dearest Julie, please be at the house by 7 p.m. tonight. We have a wonderful surprise for you. Don't be late. Zoxa, my blood ran cold. My fingers hovered over the screen, a primal instinct screaming at me. A wonderful surprise from my mother was a beautifully wrapped harbinger of trouble. The last time she'd used that exact phrase, it was to spring an intervention-style meeting where the entire family, aunts, uncles, the whole juror pressured me to invest my life savings into Leo's ill-conceived tech startup. He pitched it as the next big thing, but it was built on a foundation of pure fantasy. It folded in 6 months, taking my $20,000 with it. The apology I received was a casual, well, you win some, you lose some from my father. So, as I pulled my sedan up to the sprawling suburban home whose precarious mortgage I had been secretly helping to pay for the last 3 years, under the guise of a gift, a familiar knot of dread tightened in my stomach. The house was blazing with light. Through the large bay window, I could see silhouettes moving inside, their laughter muffled by the glass. It was a perfect portrait of familial warmth, a Norman Rockwell painting of togetherness. But from where I sat, it felt like I was watching a play, and I was the only one who didn't have the script. Taking a shaky breath, I smoothed down my coat, a nervous tic I'd had since childhood. I walked up the stone path my father was always so proud of and rang the doorbell. The door swung open instantly, as if my mother had been waiting right behind it. She was a vision of performative delight, her face expertly made up, her lipstick a slash of triumphant crimson. Surprise, she shrieked, pulling me into a hug that felt less like affection and more like an act of possession. It was stiff, her perfume overpowering. The living room was teeming with relatives, a veritable rogues gallery of my extended family whom I hadn't laid eyes on in years. There was my Uncle Robert, already nursing a drink, and Carol, whose eyes immediately scanned my outfit for its price tag, and even my distant cousin Amelia, a woman who possessed a supernatural ability to sniff out any event involving free food or potential financial windfalls. A poorly rehearsed chorus of voices erupted in unison. Happy early birthday, Julie. I forced a smile, a hollow, painful thing that didn't reach my eyes. I felt a blush of humiliation creep up my neck. Wow, you all really got me, I murmured, the light tasting like ash in my mouth. My real birthday wasn't for another 3 weeks. This felt deeply, fundamentally wrong. My mother, playing the part of the gracious host, steered me towards the central sofa. It was a seat of honor in what was rapidly beginning to feel less like a party and more like a tribunal. My father, Arthur, materialized at my side, pressing a sweating glass into my hand with a flourish. Your favorite, he declared with a booming, salesman-like grin, a classic old-fashioned. He winked. I stared at the dark amber liquid. I hadn't drunk whiskey in nearly 5 years. It was his Favorite drink, not mine. The detail was so small, so insignificant. Yet it felt like a profound symbol of how little they truly saw me. Sit, darling. Relax, Eleanor cooed, gently pushing on my shoulders. Her eyes, however, weren't on me. They kept darting nervously towards a handsome, dark brown leather-bound folder placed with conspicuous precision on the center of the coffee table. It wasn't just sitting there, it was presented like a sacrificial offering. It sat there like a loaded gun. My heart began to hammer a frantic, panicked rhythm against my ribs. I sat, the plush cushion sinking around me, and my gaze fell upon the embossed gold lettering on the folder's cover. The words seemed to shimmer under the lamplight. Isabel Vance Inheritance Trust Asset Relinquishment Agreement. My breath caught in my throat. Isabel was my grandmother, my mother's mother. The only person in my entire family who had ever looked at me and seen me, not a resource, not a solution, but a person. She was sharp, witty, and deeply cynical about her own daughter's family. She had passed away 6 months ago, leaving me her entire estate, a sum whose magnitude I hadn't even let myself comprehend, though the family lawyer had informed me it was substantial. $12 million, a number so large it felt like a dream, until this moment. "What is this, Mom?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The ambient chatter in the room seemed to dip slightly. "Oh, that's just some tedious legal paperwork, sweetheart," she said, waving a dismissive hand. A gesture of practiced nonchalance. "We can deal with all that boring stuff later. Tonight is about celebrating you." She patted my hand, but her touch was cold. But my own hand was already moving, an extension of the cold dread coiling in my gut. It was as if another, stronger version of myself had taken over. "I think I'd like to look at it now," I said. My tone was quiet, but it held a core of unyielding steel that surprised even me. The effect was instantaneous. The manufactured cheer in the room didn't just fade, it evaporated. The air grew thick, heavy, and suddenly charged with unspoken tension. My Uncle Robert cleared his throat loudly. Aunt Carol busied herself with her phone. My father, caught completely off guard, stumbled to his feet, raising his glass in a clumsy, desperate motion. "A toast," he announced, his voice strained and unnaturally loud, "to Julie, the family's brightest light and most generous soul." I ignored him. I opened the folder, my eyes, trained to scan dense legal contracts, flew across the page. I bypassed the boilerplate jargon and went straight for the core clauses, my heart pounding in my ears. Then I saw it, a single, devastating sentence in stark black ink. "I, Julie Eleanor Vance, of sound mind and body, do hereby voluntarily and irrevocably relinquish all rights, titles, and interests to the inheritance trust established by the late Isabel Marie Vance." I slowly lifted my gaze from the page to meet my mother's. Her smile was a brittle, cracking facade, her eyes wide with a desperate, pleading sort of panic. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm, each word a chip. "Advice? What is this?" "It's just a formality, honey," she insisted, her voice taking on a wheedling tone. "A simple legal maneuver for tax efficiency. It's better if the estate is managed centrally by your father and me. We have more experience with these things." "Tax efficiency," I countered, my voice rising just enough to cut through the suffocating silence. "Or a complete, hostile takeover of my inheritance, orchestrated behind my back at a fake birthday party." Leo, my brother, the man whose future I had personally financed, finally spoke up, his eyes fixed on the expensive Persian rug. "Julie, please, don't make this difficult, just sign it. We've all agreed this is for the best." A laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't a sound of amusement, it was sharp, bitter, and full of pain. "You've all agreed, so that's what this is. This party, the surprise, it was all a meticulously planned trap." Eleanor's face hardened, the last vestiges of her saccharine smile vanishing completely. She dropped the act. "Don't you dare make a scene, Julie," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "Not in front of our family." I closed the folder with a soft, definitive thud and placed it on my lap. "No, you're right," I said, my gaze sweeping around the room, meeting the suddenly evasive eyes of my aunts, uncles, and cousins. "They should all hear this. They're part of the performance, after all. They came here to watch me sign my life away." I stood up, the heavy leather folder feeling toxic in my hand. "Grandma Isabel left me everything for a reason," I announced to the silent, captive audience. "She knew. She saw this. She saw all of you for exactly what you are, and tonight, every single one of you has proven her right." The silence that followed was absolute, a crushing weight of shared guilt and avarice. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a dejuliation of war. I walked with deliberate steps over to the grand mahogany dining table, the one they only used for holidays, and placed the folder down as if it were a piece of evidence at a crime scene. I turned and my eyes found my best friend, Sophia, who had been standing quietly in the entryway, having arrived just moments after me. Her expression was a thundercloud of protective fury on my behalf. Her presence was a lifeline in this sea of duplicity. "Can we go?" I asked, my voice steady. Though my insides were trembling, she gave a short, sharp nod, her eyes like daggers, never leaving my mother's face. As we headed for the door, Eleanor's voice, no longer sweet but sharp and laced with a clear threat, cut through the silence. "If you walk out that door, Julie, there will be consequences." "Don't think for a second there won't be." I stopped at the threshold and turned back, looking my mother directly in the eye. The woman who was supposed to be my protector. "I've been living with the consequences of this family my entire life, Mom," I said, each word precise and weighted with years of suppressed pain. "Tonight, for the first time, I'm choosing to live with my own." And with that, I walked out of the house I had helped pay for, not with tears of anger, but with the cold, hard, terrifying clarity of someone who had finally seen the monsters under the bed. The chill of the night air was a welcome shock to my system as Sophia's car pulled away from the curb. The street was lined with perfectly manicured lawns and homes bathed in warm, inviting light, a facade of suburban tranquility that now seemed grotesque and menacing. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the passenger window, my heart still a frantic drum against my ribs, the adrenaline beginning to curdle into a deep, profound ache. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked, her voice a soft anchor in my swirling storm of emotions. "Not yet," I admitted, watching the house that was once a symbol of family recede into a bad memory in the rear view mirror. "But I will be after a few moments of quiet driving," she murmured. "Your grandma Isabel was the sharpest woman I ever met. She must have known this would happen. She always said your mother could smell money like a shark smells blood." A thought sparked in the dark recesses of my mind, a memory of my grandmother's final days. Her voice weak but her eyes still sharp. "She did," I said, sitting up straighter. "She left me something. She told me there was more than just the money, a message, a safeguard, something to protect me from them. A final gift." Sophia glanced at me, a determined glint in her eye. "Then it's time to find out what it is. First thing tomorrow." I nodded, a new sense of purpose solidifying over the raw wound of betrayal. "I'm calling her lawyer." We ended up at a quiet 24-hour diner, the smell of coffee and stale grease a strange, grounding comfort. Sophia ordered us two black coffees while I pulled the folder from my bag. I opened it again on the sticky tabletop, this time examining the contents with the meticulous, dispassionate eye of a risk analyst. It was so much worse than I had initially realized. Tucked behind the main relinquishment form were several other insidious documents. A durable power of attorney that would grant my parents total, unchecked control over all my personal finances, and a detailed reallocation proposal. It outlined a clinical, step-by-step plan to dissolve my grandmother's trust and transfer 100% of its $12 million value into a new Langston family trust, an entity managed exclusively by Arthur and Eleanor Langston. Sophia peered over my shoulder, her breath hissing between her teeth. "Oh, Julie, they weren't just trying to manage it for you. They were planning to gut it, to steal every last cent." A wave of nausea washed over me. "They were going to use my signature to make it all look like my idea," I said, my voice hollow. "I would have been willingly handing them the knife to cut my own throat, and they would have called it a gift." I pulled out my phone and found the last email my grandmother had sent me, just days before she passed away in the hospice. It was short and cryptic, but now it blazed with meaning. "My dearest Julie, if you ever find yourself in a storm you cannot navigate, contact my solicitor, Mr. Alastair Finch. He holds my final words for you. He is a good man, trust him. But more importantly, trust yourself. Your spine is made of stronger stuff than you know." The next morning, my hands trembled as I dialed the number for Alastair Finch's law firm. A crisp, professional voice answered, and when I gave my name, I was put through to him immediately. He scheduled me for an appointment that very afternoon. His office was in a historic downtown building, a bastion of old-world elegance with tall windows that looked out over the city park. Mr. Alastair Finch was an older gentleman, impeccably dressed in a tweed suit with kind, knowing eyes and an air of quiet, unshakable authority. He greeted me with a solemn nod, as if he had been expecting my call. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Miss Vance," he began, gesturing for me to sit in a plush leather chair, and a very, very prescient one. He retrieved a small, ornate wooden box from a large iron safe behind his desk. "She entrusted this to me, to be given to you under a very specific set of circumstances which, I gather, have now come to pass." He slid the box across the polished surface of his desk. "She said you would know when the time was right to open it." My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of dark blue velvet, was a single, silver USB drive in a thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with a wax V for Vance. I broke the seal. The letter was in my grandmother's elegant, familiar script. "My darling girl, It began, "If you are reading this, then your family has shown their true colors. I am so sorry. I spent years hoping I was wrong about them. But I could not leave you to the wolves unprotected. They see your kindness not as a virtue, but as a flaw to be exploited." Mr. Finch spoke softly as I read. That USB drive contains a video message. From her, she also left a sealed addendum to the trust, which I have here. Your family is entirely unaware of its existence. He pushed another document toward me, shall he? I nodded, my throat tight. He inserted the USB drive into his laptop and turned the screen towards me. A moment later, my grandmother's face filled the screen. She looked frail, sitting in her favorite armchair, but her eyes were as sharp and intelligent as ever. "Julie," her voice filled the room, warm and strong. A voice I missed with an ache so profound it was physical. "If you are watching this, it means they tried to force your hand. I feared as much." Tears pricked my eyes as she continued. "You were the only one who ever saw me as a person, not a purse. That is why I left you everything. Not because you needed the wealth, but because you were the only one who deserved the security and freedom it represents. But my true gift to you is not the money, it's the truth, and it is a weapon." The video then cut to a close-up of the trust addendum. My grandmother's voice narrating the damning text. "The Isabel Vance Trust contains what my solicitor and I have come to call a betrayal clause. A little bit of theatricality, I know, but I think it's fitting. It states that should any party, family or otherwise, use coercion, manipulation, fraud, or undue influence in an attempt to compel the beneficiary, Julie Vance, to relinquish her rights, the entire $12 million estate and all associated assets are to be immediately and irrevocably liquidated and transferred in their entirety to a list of pre-selected charitable foundations dedicated to supporting victims of financial abuse." Mr. Finch paused the video. "Your family's actions at that party have already triggered the conditions of this clause. Ms. Vance, they have, in their greed, already sealed their own fate. With your permission, I can set the process in motion. Today, they would get nothing." A dizzying, terrible sense of power washed over me. I could wipe them out. I could destroy the very foundation of their lives with a single word. It was a tempting thought. But then, a different idea began to form in my mind, a plan that was colder, sharper, and far more fitting. A plan that wasn't just about punishment, but about justice. "Can I have a copy of that video?" I asked. "Of course," he said, already plugging in a fresh drive. She also recorded a second message. This one, she said, was for the family. I took the new USB drive, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. A smile I didn't recognize as my own, I think, I said, my voice filled with a newfound steel. "It's time I hosted a little family gathering of my own." On the drive back to my apartment, the city lights blurring past my window, I laid out the entire plan for Sophia. Her initial shock quickly morphed into a fierce, righteous approval. "You're going to play the video for them?" she asked, her eyes wide with a kind of odd excitement. "Right in my living room," I confirmed, the plan crystallizing with every word. "I'll invite them over under the pretense of resolving things peacefully. Their surprise party is about to get a surprise ending of its own." And this time, Sophia grinned, a shark's grin. "You're not just holding the cards. You own the whole casino." That evening, after drafting and redrafting the message a dozen times, I sent a carefully worded group text to my parents and Leo. "Mom, Dad, Leo, I've had time to think, and you're right, this is a family matter. I believe we should discuss this calmly and come to an agreement. Please come to my apartment tomorrow at 6 p.m. so we can sort everything out." The reply from my mother was almost instantaneous, and it was sickeningly sweet. "Of course, sweetheart. I knew you'd see reason. We are so proud of you for being so mature about this. We'll be there." The condescension was practically dripping from the screen. She thought she had one, they all did. They were walking straight into the lion's den, assuming it was a victory parade. Sophia helped me set up. We borrowed a small, high-definition projector from her office and aimed it at the large, blank white wall in my living room. I placed the USB drive next to my laptop, a tiny silver vessel containing enough firepower to dismantle their entire world. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with the exhilarating, terrifying thrill of imminent justice. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to their schemes. I was the architect of the confrontation. At precisely 6 p.m., the doorbell chimed. I took a deep breath and opened it. My mother swept in first, dressed in a sharp, cream-colored pantsuit, looking every bit the victorious matriarch ready to claim her prize. "Julie, darling," she said, her tone cloying, "I'm so glad you decided to be sensible." My father and brother followed in her wake, their expressions a mixture of relief and smug entitlement. "I'm glad you could make it," I said, my voice even and calm, a stark contrast to the tempest inside me. "Please have a seat." I gestured to the sofa. which was positioned directly facing the blank wall. They settled in, looking expectant. Once they were comfortable, I walked over to my laptop without another word. "Before we discuss that paperwork," I said, my voice low but clear enough to command their full attention, "there's something I need to share with you. Something from Grandma Isabel." I dimmed the lights with a remote and hit play. The projector whirred to life. Suddenly, my grandmother's face, 10 feet tall and radiating stern disappointment, filled my living room. Her gaze seemed to pierce right through the screen, right into each of them. My mother gasped audibly. Leo flinched as if struck. "Eleanor, Arthur?" "Leo." My grandmother's voice boomed from the speakers, stern and unforgiving. "If you are seeing this, it means my worst fears were realized. It means you tried to steal from your own daughter and sister. Did you think I wouldn't know? Did you think I was blind to your greed?" Eleanor shot to her feet, her face a mask of outrage. "What is this nonsense, Julie? Turn it off." "Sit down, Mom," I said. My voice as cold as a grave. She stared at me, shocked into silence by my tone, and slowly sank back into the couch. "Grandma continued, her voice layered with a lifetime of disappointment. "I know everything, the secret credit cards, the loans you forced Julie to co-sign under emotional duress, the years of financial and emotional manipulation. You saw her kindness as a weakness, her generosity as a resource to be endlessly plundered. Arthur, your gambling wasn't a secret to me, Eleanor. Your desperate need to appear wealthy was always your greatest flaw. And Leo, you broke her heart more than once." The video then transitioned, showing a slideshow of scanned documents on the screen, each one a nail in their coffin. Bank statements showing my emergency money for Leo being funneled directly into my father's high-risk brokerage account. Records of my brother's gambling debts from a casino in Vegas that I had paid off. Credit card bills filled with my mother's luxury purchases from trips I thought I was funding for her health and wellness. It was a meticulous, damning archive of their decades of deceit. My father's face had gone ashen. Leo was staring at his hands, his whole body shaking with what looked like shame. "This inheritance," Grandma's voice concluded, her face returning to the screen, "is protected by the betrayal clause. Your little party the other night, that disgusting ambush, was quite the attempt, and it has sealed your fate." It choked. Strangled sound escaped my mother's throat. I switched off the projector, and the room plunged back into semi-darkness, the silence thick and suffocating, as you can see. I set into that silence. Grandma was always one step ahead. "The $12 million you tried to steal is now hanging by a very thin thread. The moment I instruct Mr. Finch, it all disappears. Transferred to people who have actually suffered, not people who cause suffering." My father finally found his voice, a strangled whisper. "Julie, we didn't understand. It was for the family. You are not the family." I shot back, my voice trembling with rage. "You are a pack of wolves that I have finally stopped feeding." I stepped forward, holding a new set of documents I'd had Mr. Finch draft. "This is a legally binding financial separation agreement. It permanently severs my finances from yours. You will have no claim to my money, now or ever. You will not ask me for another dime. If you refuse to sign, I will walk out of this room, call my lawyer, and enact the betrayal clause. You will not only lose the inheritance you covet, but I will also work with the DA's office to pursue charges for financial fraud, using the mountain of evidence my grandmother so carefully compiled." My mother stared at me, her eyes filled not with remorse, but with the raw, impotent fury of a thwarted predator. "You would do that to your own family. You stopped being my family when you decided I was nothing more than a bank account to be." "Bled dry," I said, my voice breaking slightly but my resolve holding firm as iron. "Now, sign it." My father, looking utterly broken and aged a decade and an hour, picked up the pen and signed. Leo followed, his hand shaking so violently he could barely write his name. Finally, my mother, her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack, scrawled her signature across the page. I took the documents and opened the door. "This meeting is over. Get out of my apartment." They left without another word, a silent, shuffling procession of disgrace, as the door clicked shut behind them. The silence that filled the room wasn't lonely. It was a sound of peace, the sound of chains breaking. It was the sound of a cage door swinging open, and me, finally, taking flight. The weeks that followed were a quiet, personal revolution. The first thing I did was take an extended, unpaid leave of absence from my job. For the first time, I had the freedom to breathe, to think without the constant, low-grade hum of anxiety about my family's next crisis. My grandmother's estate wasn't just money, it was oxygen. It was the chance to rebuild a life on my own terms, not one dictated by the endless, rapacious needs of others. The second thing I did was something I believe Grandma Isabel had truly wanted all along. Using her own meticulous notes as a guide, I established the Isabel Vance Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to core missions, providing financial literacy education to young people to arm them against manipulation and offering pro bono legal and psychological support to victims of familial financial abuse. I seeded it with a third of my inheritance for $1 million. It was the best money I had ever spent. I sold my sterile downtown apartment and bought a small, light-filled house on the outskirts of the city with a wild, rambling garden in the back, where I could finally plant the peonies my grandmother had loved so dearly. For the first time in my adult life, my home felt like a sanctuary, a fortress of my own making, not just a place to sleep between crises. About a month later, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but a strange impulse made me answer. Julie, a hesitant voice said. It was Leo. He sounded different, smaller. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, he stammered. What we did was unforgivable. I know that. I've started going to Gamblers Anonymous. And I got a job, a real one, in a warehouse. It's hard work, but it's honest. I was silent for a long moment, processing his words. They weren't an excuse or a demand, just a statement. Why are you telling me this, Leo? Because you deserved better, he said, his voice thick with an emotion I now recognized as genuine remorse. You always deserved better. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be someone you wouldn't be ashamed of. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. It was the first crack of true accountability I had ever witnessed in my family. Thank you for telling me, Leo, I said softly, and ended the call. My parents were a different story. I heard through the grapevine and Carol, of course, that they had to sell the large house and move into a small, rented condo on the other side of the state. My father was forced into retirement, his reputation and his social circles ruined. My mother, stripped of her main source of funding, had to get a part-time job in retail. Their world, a glittering facade built on a foundation of my money and their bottomless entitlement, had crumbled to dust. One beautiful autumn afternoon, Sophia, now a proud and very active board member of the foundation, stopped by my house. With a bottle of wine, we sat in the garden, wrapped in blankets against the crisp air, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Have you heard from them? She asked gently. From Leo? That one time, I said. Not a word from my parents. I don't expect I ever will. Do you ever regret it? She asked. The way it all went down. I thought for a long moment, swirling the deep red wine in my glass. I used to believe that blood was an unbreakable bond. I began, choosing my words carefully. That family was a non-negotiable, a sacred duty you had to uphold, no matter how much it hollowed you out. I thought forgiveness was a constant requirement, something you had to keep giving away for free, even when it wasn't earned. I looked at Sophia, my dearest friend, who had been more of a sister to me than my own blood could ever comprehend. But I've learned that's a lie we tell ourselves to endure the unacceptable. True family doesn't demand your self-annihilation. It doesn't see your boundaries as a personal attack. It cherishes your well-being as much as its own. Some ties aren't sacred, they're just chains. And if you don't find the courage to break them, they will drag you to the bottom and hold you there until you drown. My life now is quieter, but it is infinitely more profound. It is filled with the deeply rewarding work of the foundation, with the scent of damp earth and flowers in my garden, with the easy, genuine laughter of true friends, and with the deep, unshakable peace of self-possession. I didn't just inherit $12 million from my grandmother. I inherited a second chance at life, a chance to define myself outside of my utility to others. The ultimate lesson I carry with me, the truth I now share with others through my foundation, is this: you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Choosing to protect your peace, your well-being, and your future is not an act of selfishness. It is the ultimate act of self-respect. Real love is not transactional, and family is not defined by blood, but by the people who value you, who respect you, and who would never, ever ask you to become smaller so they could feel bigger. My family lost me not because of money, but because they never truly knew how to value someone they were so arrogantly sure would never leave, and in letting them go, I finally found my way back to myself.